that's something else to look at. Is a lot of these things might be a little bit more expensive initially, but these things are going to pay themselves back, you know. So if you're building your once in a lifetime house, dream project, you know, and you plan to live in that for the rest of your life, do it properly the first time.
Site to Studio 13, Kaia, what's your surname?
It's McCarty-Smith.
McCarty-Smith. Kaia McCarty-Smith from Wilderness Building Co.
Correct.
I just want to start off by saying, like, these podcasts, I find I really want to start focusing more on the people and the human sort of element. You know, I think a lot of the time we drone on about sort of industry chat and like it just becomes so generic and whatnot. So I'd love to start by we never met. This is the first time. I just want to learn about you and who you are, like where you come from. Like,
yeah, well, I think I have probably a pretty unique story to becoming a builder. Mm-hmm. I went to a Steiner school, so Melbourne Rudolph Steiner School in Warrenwood. Pretty alternative system of learning and teaching, and I kind of took it for granted with, I guess, especially in my teenage years, you know. It was such an amazing opportunity. I know, like, my parents really sacrificed a lot to send us to that school, myself and my siblings, and it was really focused around creativity and kind of boosting creativity out of kids. And so I played music. You have to play a musical instrument at that school until year 10. But yeah, I loved that. I started playing guitar and really kind of great group of friends. And something else that was probably the most kind of notable part of our school is it has an amazing outdoor ed program. So in year 9, you go on 9 different camps. Like, one of them's for close to a month. So we spent a lot of time outside.
Yeah.
The school grounds are really
That's really funny. Like, yesterday at our breakup barbecue, I learned that one of our shop drawing detail is also into a Steiner school, up in the country though.
Yeah.
And I think he was around Mansfield. I'm not sure if there's one around there.
There is, yeah.
And Cam is actually, have you spoken to Cam about this?
No.
Cam was telling me how him and his partner were thinking about, because they're going to move up the coast. He was telling me that they might, that they're considering that as well. And I found it was very interesting. Like, yesterday, Thomas was telling me, like, the school he went to, it was really focused on making sure that kids aren't boxed into a way of thinking. Like, and even in the environment, like, there's, like you said, a lot of outdoor learning. Like, the architecture, like, a lot of the windows aren't square; they're like round and triangle and whatever. Yeah. Because why should it be square? Why does it have to be square?
Yeah, it's something that I think, you know, subconsciously affected me. The architecture. So Melbourne Rudolph Steiner School is one of the most beautiful kind of learning environments I've ever seen. Yet they have even just the colours of the classrooms designed effectively to kind of help with creative process and help with learning, and they're different for each year because a child is developing differently each year. So it's it's an incredibly amazing place. But as I said, I took that completely for granted until I was probably nearly finished year 12. And something else that the school was famous for was it had the highest deferral rate in the state. So the teachers really encouraged you, once you finished year 12, to go take a year off and travel, or whatever that might be. Take a year off. You've just done 13 years of school. You may as well kind of, you know, you're just getting to that age of discovery. Go and don't just jump straight into uni. Try your hand at things. And so when I finished school, I started just doing some labouring with one of my good friends' fathers, and Joe ran a plumbing business. He had a civil background as well, and then he finished up the civil business to his brothers, got back to just doing some plumbing, and then kind of the week after he left the business, he thought, I'll make a horse stable at his property out near Listerfield Lake, and built the horse stable, and then had a friend come over and said, oh, who built this? This is amazing. And Joe's like, yeah, I built it. And then he just started rolling into doing carpentry as well. So it was quite an organic shift from him doing plumbing, organising a big team, to then swapping over to carpentry and building. So I worked with him for 7 months. He was going through a divorce at the time. So he moved down to his beach house in Portsea. So I'd drive down on the Monday, and we started doing a lot of work between the peninsula and a lot of work in Toorak. And so Joe and I became really close, spending that time together Monday to Friday, and he was an amazing teacher and an amazing energy to be around. I still haven't met anyone like him in the building industry. Once I started with him, I set a goal pretty quickly that I was going to go traveling for the second half of my gap year. Had a few other mates who were going over to Europe. So, I was working with Joe to save some money to get over there. We did that for about nearly 7 months. And I was about to fly to Europe. A week before that, Joe committed suicide, and that was like an absolute bomb went off in my life. Like someone who I was that close to, we were literally spending nearly 24 hours a day together, 5 days a week. And Joe had such a flamboyant, energetic presence that not really many people, if any, knew he was struggling with a really severe case of bipolar. And it was as I said, like a bomb went off, and I was not sure if I should still go traveling it was a massive hit. So Joe was a pretty avid traveler himself, and I just went, actually, no, that's crazy. I got to go, So it was pretty hard because I did leave like a big support network. I actually flew out the day after his funeral to Europe, and I'd never been overseas. I went by myself on the plane and met a few of my friends in London, and it was just a huge culture shock and everything. From there I spent the next nearly 6 months in Europe. It's mostly Western Europe, and spent a bit of time living in Berlin.
As much of a tragedy as it is losing Joe, that it kind of really speaks to what the Steiner School teachers were asking you to do, which is to go experience, to be open-minded, to be curious, and to experience that breadth of life. There's so much of a focus on you need to specialize, you need to go deep, you need to go down this path. But there is, and I say this with a lot of respect, but there's also so much beauty in the experience of that tragedy. I'm sure for your personal growth.
Definitely. It taught me a huge amount about myself. Joe's family was also people that I've been really close to forever, and everyone dealt with that experience really differently. I know a lot of the other tradies that we worked with at the funeral, a couple of them were just angry, others were just distraught. Others were just in shock. And to go through that as an 18-year-old, it was it was pretty profound. And yeah, I had a lot of people coming to me because, you know, I spent so much time with him at that period, probably more than his own kids in that last part of his life. So yeah, it was it was probably the biggest. There's been a few other things, but that was probably one of the biggest learning experiences for me, for sure.
Right. And then, so how did that scenario and then going and traveling, how does that inform the next steps that you take?
Yeah, well, traveling's pretty awesome. I'm not sure if you've got overseas by yourself and done some extended period of time, but it's pretty easy to get swept up in that. So once I got back from Europe, I pretty quickly after that decided that I want to do some more traveling. So when I got back, stepping back a little bit, actually, the plan was before Joe passed away, he said, when you get back from Europe, you can do an apprenticeship with me. So that had been something that, you know, I guess I'd had planted in my mind. So when I got back, I thought, well, yeah, maybe I'll pursue a trade. But then I said, well, no, I don't want to do an apprenticeship. That's 4 years, you know, of time. So I decided that I would go back to working on sites, but just as a labourer.
Yeah.
So I actually got a job as soon as I got back with Andy, who is still a really close friend, and he actually works for me now, which is awesome. But Andy was doing plastering. He does some carpentry as well, but mostly plastering. And so I just started learning how to hang sheets, and he wouldn't let me use the trowel. But we had a lot of kind of incidental carpentry, you know, linked in with hanging plaster. And Andy's an absolutely amazing character. He's 30 years older than me to the year, but we got along as if we were in the same age. You know, he was really into music. He lived in a house with quite a few famous musicians in Fitzroy back in the day. So he was someone that he was always going to gigs and going to different rock stars' houses and the like. So it was really infectious and contagious person to be around. And also he has the best taste in music. So we would just be cranking these awesome tunes every day on site. And he had a really good team working with him as well. Everyone was a musician. So often one of the guys would be going on tour. Heskey was playing with Jet, that band at the time, and the Drones, and Gus was drummer with a band called the Gin Club. So it was all these cool older males, you know, that were effectively became pretty big role models for me. So I was doing the labouring, and then I was also still playing guitar and doing a bit of music on the side of that too. And then the music actually started. I joined a new band, and that started getting a bit of traction. And as I said before, I had that bug to do more traveling, and it was about 6 months later, I went over to America for a couple of months and lived with some other musicians over there. And I also did some labouring when I was in the States. So I was living in New York, and everyone said it's so hard to get a job there and the money's so terrible. And the first night I was in New York, I was at a bar in Lower East Side, and sitting next to this guy, and American dude, and he's like, oh yeah, I do like house painting, and we're about to re-roof this house in New Jersey, and he's like, do you want a job? I was like, well, I've just kind of got here, you know, I wasn't really thinking about working straight away, and he's like, no, it'll be great, you know, a different experience for you. And I said, yeah, actually, why not? So got the train out to New Jersey a couple of days later, and we started re-roofing this house, which was a massive learning experience because it was, we were sheeting the roof with OSB.
Like, they do it for the snow and stuff like that. Yeah,
and then the shingles are going on top, and my mind was blown. We also had no scaffold. We had a rope that we tied around the chimney to our waists because the pitch was so high on the roof. It was pretty funny. The guy whose house it was, he ran a record label, and he came out and he introduced himself to me, and he's like, "Oh, you're a bogan," and I was like, "What?" His name was Mike Simonetti, and he's like, "Yeah, I've been to Australia. I DJ there sometimes and stuff." And he was this really really hilarious dude. So I ended up kind of doing about a month's work on his house with Damien, and had a ball and learned a lot of really different ways to do things. I'm not sure if you've been to a hardware store in America. They're like they make our Bunnings look like a little kind of corner miter tent or something. It's incredible. And just I remember just like seeing all these tools, that we didn't even have here yet. For like a third of the price. And it was it was a really cool experience. And then I came back to Australia again after that time in Europe, and I was back for about 2 weeks, and my mates who I was living with in New York, they just got asked to do a tour of the States. So they said, "Can you come back? Do you want to come on tour with us?" So I said to Andy, who I was working with again, I said, "Well, I've just been asked to go on tour." And he said, "Go for it." It was 27 shows in 32 days.
What year was this?
This would have been 2011. Yeah. So I was 19, had my 20th birthday there during that trip. And you're not even allowed to go into a
bar,
venue until you're 21. So here was myself and my new friends traveling around America in a Dodge sports car. Literally sleeping in motels, and would play the gig. That was enough money to get us to the next town. It was a pretty wild experience.
And then where does the building journey really start to kick off?
Well, it was pretty much when I got back from America, our band started really, like my band that I was here in Australia with, really started kind of becoming quite popular. And we started doing some tours around Australia, and I was then just still labouring. And Johnny, who was the guitarist in the band, he was a few years older than me. And I remember this so vividly. We were at band practice at our studio, and Johnny's like, "What are you doing? You can't just keep labouring." He was a school teacher, and he's like, "You got to get something behind you. Like the band's doing good, but what happens if it crashes? You need something to fall back onto." And so pretty quickly after that, I decided, I'm going to do my apprenticeship.
Carpentry.
Yeah. So I kept coming back to carpentry, really. Like that's what I was mostly doing with Joe, the plastering and learning all those other trades, and did some painting, did some landscaping in that time. But I kept coming back to carpentry. It felt probably most comfortable to me. And then, it wasn't long after I kind of made that call. One of my best mates, Mo, who's also a builder now, he'd just finished his apprenticeship, and he picked up some work subcontracting to a builder called Basis Builders, and they were looking for an apprenticeship. For an apprentice, sorry. And so Mo called me straight away, and he said, like, you got to give this guy a call. They're best builders I've ever worked for. They're doing great jobs and really organised. Give him a call. So I called Reese and arranged to kind of do a trial that next week. And I remember.
And what was that? What was that apprenticeship experience like for you?
It was good. It was so Basis at that time were doing work pretty much for one architect at that time. We were working for it's called Make Architecture, now Studio Bright, and so it was highly architectural, beautiful, but not over the top designs,
like well considered.
Yeah, definitely. I still to this day think if you were looking for an architect that does work of a really high level, but it's not too showy. I think Studio Bright are amazing and really good value for money as a client as well. I think they really get a lot out of the houses that they renovate, and so I was really lucky. I really got kind of swept up in that architecture very quickly, taking those plans home. They were really good drawings. I remember Reese would like print out the plans for me to take home, and I really started kind of getting a good good feel for those drawings, because having 5 different jobs with the same architect was amazing, because I really got to understand the nuance in those designs. And I stayed with Basis for a couple of years, and then had another friend who was looking for an apprentice as well, and I actually made the call to swap. So pretty much halfway through my time, I jumped in with my friend Joseph, and finished my time with him. And so I think that was really good too, because I got the experience of working in Basis, which was a pretty well-oiled machine, to jumping in with Joseph, and he chucked me in the deep end. I started running some pretty big projects while still an apprentice. In hindsight, was it's definitely got me to where I am now, but at the same time it was pretty stressful. I think overall my apprenticeship, and I've been reflecting on this a lot lately, because I've started hiring my own apprentices and kind of really understanding what worked for me and what didn't work. I think everyone is different, but I think it was really good for me to get kind of 2 very different takes.
Yeah. And so once you're qualified, are you work in a building company? Do you work supervisor, or do you learn the CA side of things as well? Like what does that journey look like to your building registration?
I did it all really. I started off supervising, and then once that project finished, Joseph kind of had like 4 jobs all finish at once. And I was the youngest supervisor, and so a couple of us ended up moving to different places. And the architect that I worked for on the last job I did for Joseph, we got along really well. And he had a couple of little small jobs that he thought might be appropriate for us. So not long after finishing with Joseph, I ended up kind of effectively running my own job for him. We did a recording studio for Sony in Richmond, and that was an awesome job. It was something that was completely different. I had a real interest in music,
close to your heart.
Yeah, exactly. So I had that interest in music, and so it worked out really well. And now in hindsight, that job has kind of led me a little bit to where we are now. because we had to consider, building this airtight and sound tight box effectively. And that's kind of, moved into some of the work that we're doing now. But Nick was the architect, and he's been a really strong supporter of myself. So we did a couple of jobs together. And then after that, I thought, I want to learn more. Let's maybe go into a different role. And as you said before, I actually went into a contract admin position for a company called McCorkle Constructions. That was my first kind of taste of commercial. So I'd been in kind of that architectural domestic sphere my whole career to that point, and it was it was a pretty big shock.
What kind of commercial, like what scale type of project were they doing?
Yeah, so the two projects that I was working on when I was there, we were doing a $20 million swimming pool out in Wyndham Vale. So it was a pretty funny scenario, because there's a new estate being built, but they have to have the infrastructure there to be able to kind of increase how many houses they put there. So we were building this giant swimming pool in the middle of a paddock. So it was just, even the physical landscape was completely different. And, being in a site shed and, coming from that trade background, I always kind of naturally lent towards kind of, helping physically in those situations. And, now I'm wearing a shirt and nice black pants. And so, I kind of pretty quickly kind of caught on to it probably wasn't aligning that well with my kind of core values.
Wasn't aligning, but we spoke about this with Oscar from LawCon on episode 11. So he did his time with a high-end architectural builder, and then worked in commercial, like hospitals, schools, as a site manager, foreman site manager. And as much as that wasn't his passion, as much as how demanding it was and how soulless it was and how difficult the contractors can be to deal with, that he said for him was very formative for him to then become an architectural builder, because it taught him documentation, it taught him contracts, it taught him program, it taught him all those things. Are there similarities in your experience with Oscar?
100%. Yeah. Like I learned of processes that I didn't even know existed. And, I think when you're starting to play with sums of money that are that large, you're forced to really kind of, it's a bit different to doing a deck, where, if you miss getting the screws, it's okay.
You don't need a supply contract for the screws.
Exactly. Yeah. Whereas, working on that pool, like I think the roofing contract was 1.5 million. So it was, it was a really, really another jump into the deep end. But I also found out quite quickly that I had a pretty good understanding. I knew how everything goes together. Where a lot of the other contract admin people that I met during that time, they came from uni and they didn't really understand the physical side of it. So I think that really helped me, and it helped me learn so much during that phase, because I already had the knowledge to kind of go off. So I think it really honed my skills.
That speaks again to the Steiner philosophy. From what I'm learning from you, is breadth of knowledge. Not this isn't the economy of 50 years ago where you specialize in something and you work in that job for 50 years. How you're creating values, high-end architectural, because you know how to build, but you also know how to run business, and you also know documentation, and that those two things tied together is a 1 + 1 = 3 situation.
I saw also, I say this all the time, but learnt what not to do from other people as well. I was a watcher. I just absorbed what was around me. I would have been the worst person to employ as an apprentice, because I also had such high standards for everything, but those high standards applied to my employers. as well. So I would always kind of see, why the hell are they doing it like this? Or if we did it this way, you know, wouldn't we get there faster, or wouldn't there be less risk?
Was that also part of your education, was to question things and to always be curious and to challenge ideas and to really innovate anywhere that you see?
Definitely. I think that was part of my education, but it was also part of my upbringing, like, and the people that were around me. Like,
your parents were hippies.
Oh, my name's Kaia. So yeah, definitely.
Beautiful name, by the way. It is a beautiful name. Yeah.
I hated it as a child, but it's I've grown to like it. But
grown to love it, you mean?
Yeah. But no, definitely came from a pretty alternative background. But my stepfather, he was an engineer. So, you know, he was always solving problems in his shed. You know, like he was always working on stuff, and he ended up actually just doing kind of general mechanics when he was from New Zealand, moved here and stopped the engineering and got into fixing people's cars. But yeah, always kind of had that mentality of like, if something's broken, let's try and work out how to fix it. I think there was multiple kind of facets to that, but I think that's probably brought a pretty kind of well-rounded approach to certainly how we do things now.
Yeah. Like if I think about people in business who I admire or who I think have a lot of potential or do really well, I think one of the most dangerous sort of traits to have is to be open-minded. That makes you really dangerous. Like as a competitor in business, I think being open-minded, being able to humble yourself and observe and listen, which is what you're saying, you know, really looking at things and analyzing how you can innovate and make improvements. I think that's something I'm very, because I went to just a very standard public school. I just had a very standard public school education, and I certainly wasn't exposed to this thinking of you have to be open-minded, you have to be as curious as possible. And I'm very grateful that I sort of developed that over time myself, you know, as I've entered the world, and it's something that I'm incredibly grateful for, because you just have to be open-minded and curious if you want to keep improving.
And it makes it more enjoyable too, for sure. I think for yourself, if you know, it's not getting stale. You're always looking for something and looking to improve. So, it's also hard though as a business owner, because you know we now as Wilderness, you know, we've got probably 4 different kind of styles of things that we do. We're not so niche. We have a few things that are niche, but and I'm constantly kind of thinking of other avenues and things that we can explore. So it drives my partner crazy, all my new ideas that I have each week. But,
yeah. Well, you have to think, like people have to not be afraid to think, you know, like we live in this place where you know, I consider it a real privilege to be able to think whatever you want to think. You know, that's, if you look at a lot of places in the world, you're not allowed to think. It's incredibly dangerous. So I mean, I have a very good relationship with my dad, and we talk. You know, he's like an ideas guy, and 95% of his ideas are shit. But those 5% of good ideas, there's a lot of beauty. There's a lot of beauty in that, you know. With my mates, I was just saying to my mate yesterday, he was talking to me about ideas for his business, and I said, you know, why do I push back on all of your ideas? Why do I sort of am so pessimistic about a lot of your ideas? I said I should stop doing that. You know, we should flesh ideas out, but not sort of knock them down right away, because who's to say that it just won't work if you don't try it, for example.
Yeah, well, that kind of ties us into what we're doing at the moment, because when we started Wilderness, so John Raisin is my business partner. We actually met, we were doing a job next door to each other, and so we just kind of, you know, general chit chat, you know, see each other as you park at 10 to 7 in the morning, you know, and throughout the day, and taking the bins out and the like, and we kind of got a bit friendly, and I was on that job for a year, and I think he was there for, I don't know, about 3 months. And when he was finishing up, he said to me, "Oh, we'll do something together one day." And I was like, "Oh, it's kind of a weird thing to say. All right, no worries." And then, sure enough, we'd exchange numbers and the like, and he was a pretty unique builder. I think, his attitude and kind of charisma, and like there was something I wanted to know more about him. I was intrigued, and so when I was kind of still in that contract admin job, or just finishing up, I decided to reach out to John, and we went and got a coffee, and he said, "Why don't you do your own thing?" And I said, "Well, I don't know. I hadn't really kind of thought about it too much." And he said, "Well, how about I kind of mentor you for a little bit and see how we go?" And I think that lasted for about 2 weeks, and then he said, "Let's just do this together." So that was when we birthed Wilderness, and we had some pretty I certainly had some pretty kind of strong ideas about what I wanted the business to be, and the direction that I wanted it to go in.
So firstly, what year? How many years ago was this? You started Wilderness.
This was 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Yep. So late 2019. So we did a couple of small bathroom renovations leading up to Christmas in 2019, and then start of the year was the Black Summer bushfires. And
I remember that.
Yeah, so there was a huge kind of I felt instantly like, what can we do to help? We're in the building industry, people don't have a home. What can I do to help? And got put in touch with a community town called Kajiwa, which is up near Corryong in the Upper Murray region. And the town got annihilated. And one of the guys who lived in the town, who was kind of, I guess kind of a bit of a public figure in the town. He was friends with my mum, and so got put in touch with him, and he sent me this photo of the playground, and it was a plastic slide.
Yeah, and
my hand gestures aren't going to help with depicting this, but it was a plastic slide that had it was a cylinder, and it effectively, it would have come down about 3 meters.
Melted like a slinky.
Completely melted. There was like 800 mil of it left attached to the burnt out steel frame, and I remember seeing that image and just going like, "Oh, far out!" Like,
So I'm just going to cut you off there.
Yeah.
So tell us what your vision was for Wilderness, and then how that informed your next steps for what you did with the bushfire.
Yeah. So sustainability was number one. Like that was the goal. Working in the other businesses that I've been in, and especially in that architectural space, there was so much waste. There was so much excessive over specification of things. There was so much money that was getting wasted. And we were building these award-winning, beautiful homes that a client would move into, and it wasn't comfortable.
And you'd ask, for what? What are we doing this for?
Exactly. And that fact almost made me leave the building industry, because I saw not much hope for a solution there. And when I met John, he came from a background of very kind of forward-thinking, sustainability focused construction. Some of it, pretty out there, like straw bale houses and mud bricks and things, poured earth floors, things that were, hippie or certainly alternative here. And then, I guess just throughout my research and experience, started looking into things like tiny houses and all. There's all these kind of really cool ideas out there of how performance could be improved and not necessarily having to increase the budget too much.
So at the forefront is this environmental social mission.
Correct.
Yeah.
And that's a really good point. Social is the social benefit is just as important as the environmental.
One.
Yeah.
It should tied together. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And then probably, not long after I learned about Passivhaus, which is a German energy model that was invented in 1991 in a place called Darmstadt, Germany.
Darmstadt.
Yeah. So it was this building effectively that the founder Wolfgang Feist dreamt up, and he also, being in that Central Europe kind of cool climate, you're getting temperatures like when I was in Germany, I think it was, in Berlin it was -15, so it's freezing cold, and he came up with a way to effectively just using these 5 principles to not need to have heating or cooling, which, you say that to people now, even in Australia, you say you don't need to have a heater, they'll tell you you're crazy, and so, once I kind of learned about Passivhaus, it's something that you can't unlearn. And I jumped down the rabbit hole and I just didn't get out.
Yeah. But you guys aren't a passive house building company. Like
we are moving that way. Yeah.
Okay.
So we would call ourselves a high performance building company.
Yeah. Because Passivhaus is a standard.
Correct.
There's
0.8
air changes an hour or something like
0.6.
There's like certain rigid sort of requirements there. Which
the more that I've learned about it, I think I have a lot more respect for it being a system, because if you follow those rules and you tick all those boxes, you're going to achieve the outcome. Whereas in 95% of other homes that are being built here in Melbourne, it's actually like, and the star rating and the like, it's not proven.
Yeah, it's very
it's
fluffy.
Hypothetical.
Very
exactly.
Fluffy, yeah.
So I like that Passivhaus is tested and it's accredited, and the beauty of it is also that you know what you get before you even start building. So the modeling's all done before we start, so the client knows exactly how much energy that house is going to use. It's all calculated within the PHPP modelling, which is necessary to certify a Passivhaus. So that part alone is for us as a builder, I also see it taking a lot of risk out of the process, because it's, we have a Passivhaus consultant, we have a Passivhaus certifier, we're trained as a Passivhaus tradespeople. I've just completed my exam for the Passivhaus designer and consultant course as well, because there's all these people that are effectively ticking it off before you start.
I think for passive homes, I think that design and construct, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah,
makes a lot, because you're relying not only on the expertise. If you separate the expertise of the designer from the builder, I feel like there's a disconnect there. So I think if you guys, because you said you're accredited for the design as well as the building, that I think that makes a lot of sense for Passivhaus design.
Yeah, but something else that's kind of very common in the Passivhaus sphere is the early engagement of the builder. So if an architect, a client comes to them and says, I want to build a Passivhaus, they're going to call a builder straight away and they're going to say, we want you to start looking at this project with us, because it's not like a traditional kind of project where you just put it out to tender, pick someone and then start the job in a month's time.
Like the construction method directly influences whether the project is going to be a success or not at the core, which is we're trying to build a passive house.
Correct.
Whereas like with traditional design bid build models, you don't have that, there isn't that conflict or that need. Yeah.
Correct. So that was something else that, I'm sure you've priced a lot of projects, that were through the tender process and the projects didn't get built, or
I'd say we certainly don't win most of them, but yeah, a lot of them just get put on hold or don't get built, or yeah.
Exactly. And as a builder, we like to, I learned especially through that CA process, I like to price things accurately. Like, we don't use square meter rates because, especially right now, you can't. We like to spend at least 3 to 4 weeks on the tender to ensure that we're pricing it as accurately as we can for those clients, but also for ourselves. So we know, that we're heading into something that we know we're going to either make money from, or it's going to be tight in this area. So we're going to really need to put our energy towards that. So we priced a couple of projects in the early stages of Wilderness, and they were over the budget of the client, and the projects didn't happen. And, I spent a month of work on that, and not just myself, it's also our team of subcontractors and the like that are pricing it. It's wasting everyone's time. And so I just went, wait a second, there's got to be a better system here. And something that I kind of came back to from that commercial space, which my bosses were doing, was early contractor involvement. So the designer would come to them at concept phase, and effectively that meant that the builder, the architect are forming a team from day one and working together to get to the outcome that everyone wants, a successful project. And on budget, on time, everyone's happy.
Yeah.
So
what does that procurement model look like for Wilderness now? How have you, what are you stepped into, or what are you stepping into?
Yeah. So we, at first, when you say to someone, we don't tender projects, we had a few architects and clients be like, well, you're crazy. You have to, like everyone else does it. You've got to do it. So we first I personally had to learn to say no to things. And now we have 5 projects lined up for 2022, all of them under our early contractor involvement kind of setup. So effectively, we want to break that stigma. We're not charging for a quote. We are charging to be a consultant effectively at the table. And something else that kind of got raised pretty quickly is like, well, what if the client doesn't necessarily want to sign their life away to the builder before they've actually even really got to know us? So we also introduced a part of the puzzle which we call the break point. So we'll do a project budget price to the concept design. If there's the preliminary engineering and the like, that's really beneficial. So it'll get it more accurate. So we'll do that process, and then that will inform the architect or designer throughout the design development phase. So they know that things are kind of on track. And then at the completion of design development, and engineering's come in and any other consultant kind of input, we'll do our detailed cost proposal for the project. So we're not calling it a quote, it's a cost proposal. And we spend over a month on all of those to make sure they're as accurate as possible. We're giving cost options and the like for certain things if we're getting close to budget. And that's the other point, we're all working together to get to a budget. We're not just pricing it to try and get to this number that nobody knows. We're all working together to get to a budget. And I think designers used to lean on, quantity surveyors and the like, who aren't invested in the project. They just put figures to it, So we're actively trying to help everyone get to that figure. And then from there, once we've given our cost proposal, we provide that break point to the client and designer. If they want to go out to market and get it priced by other people, that's fine. We've charged for our time from day one to that break point, and we charge in a way that, everyone's happy if we walk away or they walk away. But with every single one of these projects, we've formed an invaluable team over that period of time. That might be a year, that might be 6 months, different for every different project. And every single one of the clients have decided to move forward with us as the builder. So it's an invaluable process. We've had to say no to a few amazing projects because, they didn't want to go down that path of that model, but we've had to kind of draw a line in the sand. And we now have architects, designers and clients coming to us because we're doing that model.
What does the pricing look like? Like, how do you work out what the cost is going to be of that consulting scope?
That's different, project to project. So the Passivhaus projects that we're doing, they're a little bit more expensive because there's more work in it. Effectively, it kind of comes back to time spent. That being said, we're not covering all our costs.
It's not a profit center for you guys. No. It's really just a demonstration of faith between parties that there is intention to work, kind of like a step up from like a negotiated tender, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. And to be honest, that, everyone should be getting paid for that work. That's a huge amount of energy outlay. And, most builders have just accepted that they have to do that work for free. And, a lot of smaller up and coming kind of builders, they do that work at night once they've got home from site. It's not that kind of healthy ongoing, So, yeah, I feel incredibly lucky, that people are seeing the value there. And, yeah, we've had some, really great kind of references now and, great experiences and everyone working together to get to a common goal.
Yeah. So you've spoken about the social and the sustainability, so the environmental sustainability, social sustainability. What are you looking for in projects? Like what are the other sort of, is there anything that you want to add on to that overall mission or that overall vision for, maybe speak to the overall vision of where you see Wilderness going and then how that informs the type of projects that you want to work on?
Yeah. Well, I think, environmentally, there's a few like deal breakers for us. If your project is connected to gas, it's not a Wilderness project. And we've had to kind of help educate some clients, probably my mum most notably. There's such a romantic nature to cooking with gas. My mum has this really amazing old, it's called an early cooker. It's like a 1960s like gas cooker at her place in the Dandenongs. And, I said, Mum, she wants to redo the kitchen. Like, this is a perfect opportunity to cut your gas line. You don't need it anymore. Let's put in an induction cooktop. She's like, oh, I don't want to cook with electric. That's, there's this romantic nature that's there that is definitely starting to be on the decline.
Educate me. What's the problem with gas?
It's a finite resource that is, we extract from the earth in an invasive way. And, if you have solar and you have a battery, you can be cooking with energy that is produced. A, you don't have to pay for it, and B, it's from the sun. It's naturally occurring. So, gas is there are movements towards gas being regulated furthermore into the future, and I think it's only a matter of time until we start to see a lot of the gas elements and phased data projects anyway. We're just trying to kind of, help encourage people on that path.
Right now, does it only really make sense to cut off gas if you have a solar PV with a battery system? Because electricity doesn't come from renewable sources.
No. Yeah, if you can't produce it yourself, but you can get your electricity through providers that are, they're doing the right thing. So I think with everything, it's the environmental, social elements. It's there's so many barriers up.
Yeah, of course.
And I think gas is one that's quite easy to, it's really easy to take out because there's amazing alternatives.
Yeah.
That are
so what do you do
available.
I certainly share that romantic feel of with cooking with gas like your mum does or had. But the big functional thing for me, I think that my personal view is that hydronic heating is perfect for the Melbourne climate, just like in Germany and Europe and whatnot. That's fine, no worries. What HVAC systems do you guys recommend your clients look at?
So you can use a heat pump. So
like from the ground up.
So you can use so in slab heating works really well with an electric heat pump for the to heat it effectively. Radiators can be a little bit more problematic. You have to use a larger size boiler to get the water up to the right temperature within the unit because hydronic panels run water at 70, whereas in slab is 55.
Exactly.
So it's a lot easier and more efficient to use the electronic alternative to the gas there. So they're a little bit more cost prohibitive to some people. Like that, I think, for example, on a project that we just priced one up, I think it was about $15,000 for the heat pump, and it was about $6,000 for the gas boiler. So I think it really comes down to as you said before, where you're getting your power, your energy, and then if you can offset some of that with solar, then that's awesome.
And so if they can't do slab heating or in-grid,
maybe a passive house is a good idea then, because you don't need to have heating.
But if they weren't building a passive, would you? I mean, splitties are very very
split system. Yeah,
split systems are a lot more efficient than a ducted.
Definitely, and they're getting better and better.
Yeah.
I had such I grew up in a house. It's like don't turn the air conditioning on. It would go on like for that 3 days of 40 in a row. That would be it. So I've always kind of been very conservative, but through my kind of learnings with Passivhaus and the like, a split system is a really good way to go.
Yeah, and in Melbourne we don't actually use the aircon that much. 30 days a year max maybe. But the heater you use a lot. In Melbourne. 6 months, 8 months.
I live in a beautiful old cream brick house in Eaglemont, and that house has taught me so much. Like it's double brick. It's got, I think in my bedroom alone was 6 vents to outside. It's kind of the antithesis of a passive house.
Because homes need to breathe.
Yeah, exactly. So it's taught me a lot, and we try and not turn on the heater all the time, and we try and not run the AC. So it's a fine balance, So there's other things that you can do, like for heating, for example, like operable blinds outside, things like that. Like there's alternatives to everything. And 10 years ago it was really hard to find. Now they're everywhere. And it's, you've just got to put the energy in to find it. And getting back to like the the goal, I guess, for us with wilderness, with all of these kind of elements is, I think the next thing that we're really having to look at is waste. And it's really, really hard to get rid of things properly. So we're looking into repurposing a lot of products now on our projects, and using products that can be recycled at the end of life as well.
What's the obviously in terms of the value for the business, to go to that effort is, you have, ethical guidelines, and you have sort of the goals and the missions that you want to achieve. But for that to scale, there needs to be financial incentive, right? Or financial disincentive.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Penalties. There is a lot of there's more and more value being put on sort of social value and sustainability and whatnot, sort of in a financial sense, where clients are willing to pay more to work with someone who has a mission or stands for something. But how do you see that scaling?
Yeah, I think look at like
clients?
Patagonia, for example. Like if you can set in business an ethical standpoint that is above and beyond the status quo. I think especially over the last few years, when we've been trapped in our homes, and we're told like during the bushfires, we're told not to go outside for those days with this bushfire smoke above the city, and that those days your house was actually probably more unsafe to be in than it was outside, because we're not using things like mechanical ventilation and the like. So I think people are starting to wake up. The financial incentive for us is that, we're getting the clients that we're aligning with our values. And, it's kind of a natural sorting house, because we've got these ethical standpoints, and getting back to it, like we're not trying to charge any more than if we were getting a bin in and just dumping everything to the tip. We're having to be strategic with making those decisions financially viable for the client too.
Yeah.
So that it takes a lot of energy. It takes a lot of energy by us, but I think it's going to pay off for us with getting the right people that want to work with us because of that.
So gas, big no. Waste is an important step for you guys.
Yeah.
What are the other? You said there were deal breakers, that things that are really important to you.
Yeah, I think an all electric system is great. There's certain products like aluminium windows. They're in incredibly what's the right word?
Wasteful.
No, they're just aluminium's an amazing conductor, so it's going to bring hot and cold in and out.
Yeah.
So the thermal performance of products is something now that we're factoring in.
So what are you guys doing? Are you guys just going, all right, we stick with Ali, but we do thermally broken, or what do you?
Well,
do
there's
you do
also
timber, or like what? Yeah. Like, what are the alternatives?
Yeah, so we're 15 years behind the States and Europe with the products that are kind of readily used in Australia. So it's not too hard. You can turn to them and kind of see what they do.
And we're 15 years ahead in style and design.
Yeah.
But go on.
Yeah. No, it's and that's a hard balance. Yeah. But yeah, timber windows are amazing. But as a carpenter, I've had to go back and fix timber windows. From a maintenance perspective.
Yeah, so that's what I was going to ask. What type is it? More of a composite style?
There's some there's a company, for example, 2 companies in Melbourne that make amazing timber windows, Bink windows. And
I bought a door from Bink before.
Yep.
And down in Brayside, Chelsea Heights.
Yeah,
I think.
Yeah. So they are amazing. They're a very ethical business as well. They're sourcing all of their hardwood ethically. The other one is Parhammer. They're in Berlin, and both of those companies, they're doing European style windows. So they're sealing really well. They're airtight.
Do you like PVC?
Well, that's been a game changer. So UPVC windows are cheaper than aluminium windows.
That's been around for 30 years.
Yeah, and they outperform the aluminium windows massively. A lot of people, have had this, I guess, stigma around
because they're ugly and plastic.
And you can actually get UPVC windows now that you can use in Bell 40. So fire areas. So the project that we're doing at the moment in Fitzroy with Kennedy Nolan, it's a retrofit of 15 apartments, and they've actually decided to use the UPVC windows on that project.
Smart.
Which is it was a $150,000 cost saving to the client as opposed to using aluminium windows, which is incredible. And the performance in those apartments is going to be that much higher just by changing the frame, So that's pretty amazing. And then the other thing that I used to see a lot is, people would put all this money into their glazing, and then, it would be in an aluminium frame that's not thermally broken, or they'd put louvers in or something next to it, So I think we need to balance style with functionality, and it's just going to take some people like Kennedy Nolan, for example, to start using these products, and they'll become popular. And I think that's something that, we're really wanting to push, because, as a builder, often we don't get to make those decisions of what products are put in the project. Through the early contractor involvement process, we are asked for our suggestions a lot, it's really nice. It's really rewarding to having these architects trust your opinion and
you're a consultant.
Yeah, which I think, that's builders have so much expertise that often a lot of it is wasted or taken for granted.
Anything else apart from windows?
Windows, even kind of.
What about like the sealing of the external envelope?
Yeah,
I mean that's a huge
definitely.
one.
Even just like the wraps that were used,
wraps, how you're taping them, are you flashing them to the bottom? Are you a lot of those things. Yeah.
And that's something that I mentioned before with Passivhaus being something that is an insurance policy for me. If you follow the rules, you're going to get this product at the end of it. But it also comes down to just the general maintenance of the building. If you flash everything properly, you're using vapor permeable wraps. So if water gets into the frame, it can escape, but it can't get in. These are keeping the longevity of the building. And so we're now we use a company called ProClimber, and we get all of our wraps and tapes and the like from them, because we know their website has details on how to do every single junction, every join, what you use on the roof to the wall. And we're effectively, without putting cladding or roofing onto the building, it's completely weather tight, which is,
unfortunately cladding and roofing doesn't actually make anything tight.
And you look at things like the Anticon blankets and things that we use as the insulation in roofs traditionally, that has the silver paper
instead of the sarking.
Yeah. So that's, wrapping your house in aluminium tin foil and then putting holes in it so it breathes. You're also putting holes for vapor, water and moisture to get in. So I've had to really kind of change the way that I think about the kind of simple things. So building envelope. And then, the other one that I mentioned just briefly is the mechanical ventilation, which I think is something that people take, it took me a while to get around to it. That seems pretty extreme, that we need to have fresh air 24 hours a day getting brought into the house and then extracting air out 24 hours a day, and keeping this kind of system going. My initial thoughts were, doesn't that use heaps of energy? And, can't you just open a window? like, isn't that going to get that fresh air in? But especially with the last few years, again, everyone's trapped at home. This actual necessity that we have of breathing fresh air is vital.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I learned about at uni was indoor air quality.
Yeah.
Indoor air quality is and how it affects experience. There's a few things that we don't usually think about in building design, lighting design, air quality. So like HVAC design, think about indoor air quality. Like those things really, really, really impact the user experience.
100%.
And I don't know how many times you've told clients maybe you should sacrifice the $6,000 slab stone bench tops and get a better HVAC system.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so in a passive house, you're using a mechanical heat recovery ventilation system as well. So a bit of magic happens in this box, and that's the kind of next level. But you can also use like a decentralized HRV unit, which could just be mounted in a wall, and that's just sucking in air 24 hours a day and extracting in another part of the room. And that air is being filtered. So if you have any allergies, hay fever, right now is terrible time in Melbourne for
it's been bad this year.
Allergy sufferers. So if you can get all of that nasty stuff out of the air that's coming into your house, like the guy that I did my training with for the Passivhaus course, he suffers from hay fever like really bad. Like it's kind of debilitating at times. And he says that as soon he lives in a passive house, and within about 20 minutes of getting home, he's fine, because he's has no pollutants coming in, no toxins. He's just, it's just fresh air. And the other thing that sold it for me is I actually went and stayed in a passive house. That's one of my favourite buildings. We're actually doing some work there at the moment. It's called the Daylesford Longhouse. And you can actually rent it on Airbnb. The accommodation is a passive house. So, my partner and I stayed there and woke up in the morning. I'm like, wow, I feel really like clear-headed and, just quite fresh. And, looked up and was like, that's the fresh air vent that's been blasting onto our heads all night. You know, it's silent. You don't hear it, but that air is coming in, and it's something that it's taken me a little while to get my head around to. And I think it will take a little while for the general population to get their heads around. But I think it's hard.
I mean, like the value proposition is something that's hard to educate people on. It's you look on TV, magazines, Instagram, and you're pulled to the visual elements of what's attractive, right? So, indoor air quality is probably the least sexy thing you could think about, right?
Yeah.
But what you're saying, I mean, instead of sleeping in a carbon dioxide box all night, like you're breathing in fresh air, and that. I mean, what value do you put on 1% better sleep, for example? That's something that's very hard for clients to justify.
Or like as a parent, if your children are in that space, like you can't put value on that. A healthy home is going to create so much more positive things in your life, I think. So, once you learn all these things, it's really hard to then go back and not do them.
Yeah, well, you touched on before about the sort of architects are generally pretty socially liberal, but then they design really expensive, excessive, vanity items.
Yeah.
What do you think on the conflict there? Because there's so much social messaging about fucking carbon neutral this, that, we're saving electricity, we're this, that. But you're building $15 million houses.
Yeah.
Like, don't you? I find the virtue signaling aspect of that a little bit like off-putting. What do you think about all that?
Yeah, I think anyone who works in the built environment has such a huge responsibility to be, introducing things into the world that have a positive impact. And that is even more prevalent as a designer than a builder or a cabinet maker, Often, like, you can be doing things, you can be sourcing your board from places that are ethical and the like, but as a designer, it really comes down to them, because at the end of the day, they've sold something to the client that we've got to help build. And yeah, there's small things, there's small boxes that can be ticked by a designer to ensure that their project is going to be more ethical and have a better impact in the world. So yeah, I think it really does come down to designers. Something pretty amazing is there is, I think the numbers jumped from my head, but I think we have about 450 Passivhaus designers in Melbourne. Oh, sorry, in Australia now, which, that's gone from about 35 years ago. So there is an awakening in that sense. And I think, it's as I said before about the UPVC windows, it only takes a couple of these people to make big gestures and big statements in their projects, and it catches on. You look at like Nightingale, for example, which is, it's a model now that's being replicated around the world. It has such a kind of core values based around sustainability and making it environmentally low impact.
Yeah, I mean, like Nightingale is a great example, but I've heard a lot of negative things about the execution and the sustainability in terms of how well you can scale the project. Whether it's like residents or more people from more like the more traditional property development sort of sectors and whatnot. I mean, isn't that like an ongoing issue of how do you scale socialism? Almost, yeah.
Well, like we're working with a business called Finding Infinity, and they have we did a exhibition effectively with them for Design Week last year, this year, sorry, in March or April of 2021, and as part of that they came up with a model called a new normal, and effectively it's a blueprint for how to make Melbourne carbon neutral by 2030. If you follow these rules, or you follow these systems, you can effectively, and it's going to cost this amount of money. I think it's $30 billion, but they'll pay back in 10 years.
Not a lot of money.
and that'll pay back in 10 years, So that's something else to look at, is a lot of these things might be a little bit more expensive initially, but these things are going to pay themselves back, So if you're building your once in a lifetime house, dream project, and you plan to live in that for the rest of your life, do it properly the first time.
Yeah, think about that, like value, not just in how much is it per square meter. Think of it sort of your experience or your user experience in the home, quality of life, and then life cycle costs life cycle costs are pretty easy to calculate. You work out often the idea with passive is you sort of put more of the upfront. There's more upfront costs, but overall it's going to be lesser in terms of life cycle costs, so it's going to even out. Definitely.
And we've kind of worked out ourselves and with some of the other architects that we work with, it's if you want to build a passive house, it's going to cost you somewhere between 6 and 10% more than a traditional architectural build. But if you compare that, that's on a kind of project somewhere between 800,000 and 2 million kind of thing, probably 6% more. But if you're building a swimming pool, or if you're building a large commercial building, it's a lot more cost effective to build passive house than it is to build traditionally. So that's something that we're actually starting to see some schools We've looked at a few tenders recently, of primary school, South Preston. There was a cultural centre in Cowes, which my old bosses have won that job, and that's a passive house. Monash Uni have said that they're only going to build passive house buildings from now on. So
yeah, I mean, if you look at for commercial spaces,
Yeah.
like if you look a little, my partner's a commercial property manager. You look at like sort of HVAC, like just facilities management, capital expenditure, sort of costs over a life cycle. That's it's huge. Yeah.
And the cost to run these buildings is
Yeah.
astronomical. So, there's Monash Uni did a student accommodation building down near Frankston, which has no heating and cooling. And the reports from the students that have been there for the last few years is like everyone loves the building, So, I think it's a pretty big issue to tackle. But we're starting small with the houses, and hopefully moving into some larger projects in the future. But we've got 3 passive house projects lined up for next year, which is pretty exciting, and then another 2 high performance homes. And my partner and myself have just been looking for ages, but we finally bought a block of land, and we're going to build our own passive house as well, which is pretty exciting.
Whereabouts are you guys building?
We've just bought in Chewton, which is just near Castlemaine. So,
Where's Castlemaine?
it's about you head up the Calder Freeway towards Bendigo.
Yeah.
And you're only about an hour and a half from CBD.
Yeah, beautiful. And you guys are going to be building passive there?
Yep. So that's a really good climate there for passive house. You need to worry a little bit about the overheating, but if you factor that in with your orientation on the site, we're going to use this one as a bit of a testing ground for ourselves to I think something else you mentioned it earlier as well is we definitely want to start doing some of our own projects into the future. So potentially our own developments and the like, and design and construct I think will be something that we'll offer.
How do you so if you were going to do like a social housing development or like affordable housing development, what would you say, all right, let's get a Nightingale licensed architect involved and do it that way, or would you do it more the Finding Infinity way, or how would you do it?
Finding Infinity, they're like the Sea Shepherd of the building space. Do you know what I mean? They really do shake the horns, and I think that they're very numbers focused. So they'll tell you exactly what it's going to cost and how quickly it's going to pay back for you. So if you're a developer and you're looking to, take on a project that has a social impact, then I'd certainly be giving them a call.
I think if you're a developer and you want to, the only way for it to make, and I'd love to see it scale. I think, we're young kids. We'll call us kids. We're young kids. We're young guys. Like affordable housing, for example, is a very, it's a very big issue for our generation. But I just think it has to make money for the developer, for it to be sustainable.
And if you do it smart, it does.
As much money as building 3 units in Ringwood.
Yeah, no, and it does. Yeah. If you get the right people on board, the numbers don't lie.
Yeah. That's really important, because the same way that like you said, you can choose to charge for tenders. You can that's the beauty of the capitalistic sort of economy that we live in, is you can do whatever you want and the market will speak. So I firmly believe that any sort of social mission has to be backed by, it has to make sense.
Yeah. And I think it really does. Like if you if you get the right people involved, it's a no-brainer.
Yeah, I think the gap there is there's just like education kind of gap where developers don't know how to be very thoughtful about a lot of these things and sort of engage the right consultants. And then, I mean, a great example is sort of developers not wanting to spend on design, for example. Like they'd rather spend more on the finishes and not on the design when they could have built smaller houses that are more considered, that are going to make them more money. I guess that's kind of like the issue with the passive.
Yeah, well, unfortunately in Melbourne, our policy for development, especially like in the CBD, for example, is to not have a policy. We're unfortunately built some absolute monstrosities in this city, and it's now, on potentially the next generation to help kind of solve some of these issues. So yeah, I think in any practice, if you get the right people around you and the right team of consultants, you're going to be more informed, you're going to make better decisions, and you're going to get better outcomes.
Yeah. I saw you came out with a list. Was there anything that you wanted to discuss?
No, that was just mental notes for myself, and I don't think I actually looked.
Yeah. You can look. Feel free to look.
No.
But I mean, I'm very curious as to sort of what. I think we have a better insight into sort of what drives you and what you're trying to do. But what's in it for Kaia? Like what does Kaia want to? Like what is it? Is it? I'm sure it's a little bit of everything, but what's in it for you? What do you want to do?
That's a really really good question, and it's something that sometimes this job, especially when you're battling against a lot of people that usually say no to you on these kind of environmental kind of decisions, it can wear you down a little bit. But no, I've always kind of felt that, from a young age that, I want to make a difference in what I do. Playing music was a pretty amazing, feeling. You get this energy in the room, you're influencing people through your creativity. It's an amazing feeling. And now that I've retired from music, I don't get that feeling very much, but anymore. So I think, I'm wanting to kind of create a business and create a awareness for people in the construction industry, that you can do things better and you can do things more ethically and make a positive difference to the built environment, rather than just take and use.
Yeah. And a great way to do that is to make content around sort of your truth and whatnot.
Yeah.
And we spoke briefly about you saying that you thought about starting a podcast and whatnot. I think that'd be a fantastic thing for you to do.
Yeah. I think it's been really easy for me over the last 2 years of lockdown and the like to just really throw my energy into the business. And I guess it gets back to that, analogy of it doesn't really feel like work when you're doing something that you feel called to do. I've looked into the idea of doing a podcast. It's just been the time thing of late, but a few prods from people like yourself that might happen one day. We're definitely going to be starting to explore some video content as well. I think that's something that, for the younger generation, a lot of content is absorbed by our eyes. And so the project that we're doing in Fitzroy with Kennedy Nolan and Finding Infinity, I think that's a pretty good example of a project where we're not reinventing the wheel. We're making some slight changes that are going to have positive impacts on the tenants of the building, the developers, and ourselves as we're doing the process. And so I think, and we're going to publish the the kind of financials of that project as well. So to show people, this is what you can do.
Yeah, I think case studies would be beautiful.
Mm.
I think case studies, like you said, you can do it in video form. You'll put out the sort of the written form as well.
Mm.
I think that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Not just pretty videos, like proper case studies.
Exactly. Yeah. More like, documentary style.
Yeah.
That's something that, I love when I get the time. I'm always looking up documentaries and even just, things like the local project and Never Too Small is something that they've just done a recent video series on YouTube about Melbourne and development and building. It's highly recommended.
Okay. So is that a YouTube channel?
Yeah, Never Too Small. I think it's called.
They're not are they the tiny home channel? Or
they do some of those as well. I forget what the series is called. I think it's.
I'm sure.
It'll pop up on YouTube. But it's I love that kind of content. So I think the more of it we can make that's centered around Melbourne would be great.
Yeah, fantastic. Anything else you wanted to cover?
No, apart from saying thanks for inviting us in here, and it's been pretty strange to first meet someone on the opposite side of a microphone, but it's been a really nice, really nice chat.
Yeah, I really enjoy this format of sort of meeting someone on the podcast. I think that that mutual sort of discovery process is cool. So
definitely,
thank you. Thanks for coming. All the best with Wilderness. I mean, we started our business around the same time. So I started in October 2019.
Yep.
Are
you looking forward to hopefully not operating in a pandemic sometime soon?
Yeah, look, it just is what it is. Like, I think there's always something. There's always going to be something.
Yeah, that's true.
And you just have to just hold yourself accountable. Say, all right, I'm in charge. I'm in control. It just is what it is, and that gives you a lot of freedom to just operate and keep moving. But like high and mighty talk aside, yes, I'd like the pandemic to end. Yeah.
No, it's. I think it's certainly made us, set deeper foundations and processes, and I think it's. We make a joke about it all the time, but it can only get easier from here. Is kind of our premise, because starting a business is hard.
Yeah,
starting a business at that time was maybe crazy.
Hey, I also saw on your Instagram for your Christmas breakup, you guys went and did the ice baths and breathing exercises and stuff.
Yeah,
are you big into all that kind of stuff?
I think over the pandemic, I've really kind of focused on my health a lot more. I've had some pretty kind of bad underlying issues with my gut and the like, and we went and actually spent the day with Mark Tiger Kluwer, and Mark is actually a builder who I used to work for when I was in between doing my traveling years ago. And so Mark and I always kind of stayed in touch. And in 2017, he did a Wim Hof retreat, totally changed his life. And after that weekend, he decided to leave his building company. And he had this vision of building a retreat and, doing workshops with people. And, so it was pretty special. Mark kind of built the space just before COVID and then couldn't really open and do his workshops. And so, I've been meaning to get up there for a really long time. And, it kind of all just fell into place. Our team that we have at the moment is, a really kind of alternative and amazing group. And I said, look, guys, we're our last day. We're going up to Dalesford for the day, and we're going to do an ice bath. And everyone really didn't, everyone was pretty nervous, myself included. Like it's pretty daunting. And so
Painful.
we didn't really know what we had in store for us for the whole day as well. So it started out with kind of walking in silence into the property with Mark, and then we did some kind of guided meditation and breath work, and then it culminated in the ice bath. And everyone it was amazing to see, like that kind of camaraderie and support for everyone as they were going through like a pretty intense experience was amazing. John, my business partner, he's in his 60s, and he went first and set the tone so high for all of us. It was amazing.
How many minutes did you do in there?
Well, I think he actually was probably in there for well over 5 minutes. Whoa. Because one of the other guys was in there first and jumped out, and so Mark was kind of making sure he was all good and kind of forgot about John for a second. So John stayed in for about 5 minutes and just absolutely nailed it. And then
what a monster.
It just set the tone, and everyone else ended up staying in for 3 minutes, which was the water was about 1 degree. So it was a pretty profound experience, an amazing stress release. And so a really beautiful way to end the year with the team. So highly recommend go and check out Mark. And his retreat's called Elevated Springs. And it was a absolutely beautiful experience. And I think, we're now talking, we've just signed a lease for a new space for the business, the HQ. And I think we're going to set up a
ice bath.
A chest freezer ice bath in there. So the great majority of my showers are cold showers, and I do that just for the mental health sort of benefit. I've never done an ice bath. I can only imagine how much tougher it is than cold water. Oh well, it was bizarre. Like I didn't feel cold, and I didn't feel pain.
Okay.
It was a feeling that I've never experienced.
Well, I think one thing that might make it not as bad as I'm thinking is because the water is still. When you're under running water, it's a bit different. You
want to stay as still as you can as well. So that happened with one of the other guys, when he started moving, and then he got like
shock.
Like this shock factor again. But it all just came back to your breath. And so just something as simple as just breathing in and out through your nose can have such a profound effect on calming all your senses.
That's why I got to get I've got a bad deviated septum, so I got to get that fixed.
Yep.
So I can breathe out of my right nostril.
Yep.
Can't breathe. Where's the new factory office HQ?
We're going to be in Brunswick. Yeah.
Hipster Central.
Yeah. Not really what I'd kind of had in mind, but
Brunswick's nice, man.
Yeah.
What kind of space is it?
It's 400 square meter warehouse. Yeah. So
big.
We're going to share that with a couple of other makers. So we're going to set up a bit of a kind of workshop that's a bit communal.
Yeah.
We got some storage and stuff for all of our gear, and we'll have our office there as well, which is super exciting.
That's awesome. How many people in the office, in the team?
So there'll be 3 of us in the office, and then we've got another 7 on site. Yeah.
And that's just carpenters and supervisors?
Correct, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
What's your take on running a team of carpenters as opposed to subbing it all out and all of those things?
It's just what I've known. It's certainly been what's comfortable, but at the same time, we're always open to new ideas and trying different things. We've really kind of focused on the last 2 years is building that team, and it's really hard to get good tradespeople. And so, we make sure we pay our team really well and we provide an environment that they want to be in as well.
Culture's number one, man. Like yesterday we had our breakup barbecue, and I sort of, gave a little speech at the end, as you do, and I said, for me, this year has been a huge success because we've been able to build a team. So that was my sort of number one goal for this year, was to build a team. We've got 3 tradesmen and an apprentice now,
Awesome.
plus me. So it's like that was and then our subbies who do drawings and install and all that. So just building that team was just so important to me. As much as we were, we were very disorganized in some areas. We really weren't very profitable on some jobs, but that sort of all didn't matter because that team, that's the infrastructure.
Yeah, I totally agree.
That's the infrastructure, right? And not just having the people there, not just having the labor resources there, but just having that, creating that synergy, starting to create the relationships and that flow between the team, and then so it sort of left me feeling like, all right, like we're ready to boogie next year, man. Like we're ready to fucking give this a really good go.
Yeah, I agree. We've spent certainly the last 12 months just trying to kind of refine systems, and it's a couple of the guys, it's been their first ever project that they've run and the like. So I think we're really excited to hit the ground running in 2022 as well. Yeah.
What I did this on the last episode. I said, let's end this in a cute kind of way. What are you grateful for? What do you like? What's that sentiment that you're carrying, and where's that gratitude coming from for you?
I think I'm grateful that we live where we do. I have the privilege to make a lot of the decisions that I'm making in the business, and I'm really excited of what's to come. I think really showcasing something that I feel will become commonplace in the future. I think I'm grateful that there's other people that are seeing my vision too, and kind of attracting towards that. I'm grateful for my health. We've had one of our guys, who's been really unwell over the last few months. Yeah. And that's been really hard as an employer. He's also my youngest brother. So that's been really hard. So really, really thankful for that. Super excited for what's to come.
Yeah, awesome. I share a lot of that sentiment with you as well. I mean, as an immigrant, I think I'm eternally sort of grateful for this place, unless it gets mega fucked up. But like, it's like I'm very. That's always a given for me.
That's awesome.
But I think what I want to focus on is I'm very grateful that I get to sort of meet people, have these conversations with them, and satisfy that curious part of me and develop that curiosity and become more open-minded, become more humble and a better listener, and just so grateful for the learning opportunity.
Yeah. Well, I think you're doing an amazing job. Even just bringing this podcast out. I first learned about you via the podcast, and it's an amazing thing, and it's a really hard thing to be doing. When you're already running a business. So I take my hat off to you, because it's people like you that are getting these different messages out, and everyone has a different story to tell. There's something to be garnered by every one of those conversations for everyone who listens. So great job.
Thanks. Yeah, everyone's got a beautiful story. Everyone's, if you quieten down your heart and you listen and you're open, everyone's story is beautiful, and you can take away so much. And I want to thank you for sharing yours today.
Oh, thank you very much.
I like the way I ended up.
Very well. Very well.
Okay.
Thanks, Charlie.